Hi, I'm FullDeck.
And I'm missing a few cards.
And we're delighted to bring you a puzzle today. So at this point, you should have seen the basic rules of Sudoku, and we're going to be looking at the use of center marks and corner marks to help drive forward the logic of a puzzle.
Now, we've already introduced these notational schema, and they take a little bit of getting used to. So this will be reinforcing the ideas of putting down corner marks to say, these are the only places in this box that a digit could go. And center marks for a cell saying the only digits that can go in this cell are these digits.
Yes. So the puzzle we're looking at for this is Limestone Cave by Blobz. Blobz is a prolific setter, so that's some really nice puzzles. And the rules for this one are really simple. So we've got normal Sudoku rules, which you've seen. So every row, every column, and every 3x3 box that's set off by these darker lines has to contain a complete set of the digits 1 through 9. No repetition.
Then we have thermos. Now, thermos are distinguished by a circle or a disc at one end, and then a gray line leading away from the disc. And as you move away from the disc, the digits along the thermo have to increase.
Yes.
They don't have to be consecutive. They just have to be greater than the previous one along. So on this thermo, for example, that could be a 1, and below it could be a 5, and next to that could be a 6. They can be adjacent, but they don't have to be.
Yes. So with those in mind, we're going to get started, and we're going to restart the puzzle, because that way we can know how long we took on this. It's always sort of fun to know that. Not that it never matters how long it takes you to solve a puzzle, as long as your logic is good at each step. But nonetheless, we're going to restart. So, okay. So
there's key things about thermos.
Yes, but I was going to, so I was going to say, we had talked about the tendency when you are a newish solver and you've learned about center marks, because center marks are really fabulous for keeping track of deductions, is to center mark everything. The problem is that center marks are really only useful when you can get it down to 2 or 3 center marks. So let's take a look at what we mean with that. For example, we could take this 3-cell thermo right here and start center marking it. In order to move up the thermo, if this were a 1, this digit would have to be at least a 2, and this digit would have to be at least a 3. But really anything beyond that would work. So we could have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 here at the tip of the thermo.
And now we can do the reverse. The
Yes.
tip has to be at most 9. So the next cell up has to be at most 8, and the next one up at most 7.
Yes. So this cell at the bulb could be any of the values from 1 through 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that means the one in the middle has to be bigger than 1. So it has to be at least 2. And it has to be less. Go ahead.
Has to be lower than 9. So it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, not 9.
So that level of pencil marking, of center marking, really doesn't help you see what's going on. So what we're actually going to do in this puzzle is we are going to make heavy use of corner marks to identify where things can go. And we'll remind you what corner marks are as we get there, because we're sure that's probably still fragile new knowledge for many of you. But we're going to restrict our center marks, and we're only going to allow ourselves to put center marks in if we can put 2 digits, down to 2 digits, possibly 3. But we're not going to center mark more than 3 possible values.
Not putting 7 possible.
So we're going to get rid of all of that. So with thermos, it's actually really useful to just ask questions of the form, where can a particular value go in a particular row, a particular column, or a particular box?
Sometimes that will give you a digit.
Yes.
And sometimes it'll just give you restrictions on where a digit can go.
So we're going to frame this as a conversation between us where we're going to take turns asking each other questions and then recording the deductions. May I ask the first question?
Sure, go ahead and make it a good one.
Make it a good one. Yeah, so I'm not going to ask, where does 5 go in box 5, for example. That would not be a good question at this point in the puzzle, because 5 is a middle digit. We don't know enough about what we have on the thermos, and there's not a whole lot of information in box 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look around the grid for a box that has a lot of thermo information. And box 2, every single cell in box 2 is on a thermo, and that's going to let us start asking some good questions. So missing, where does 9 go in box 2?
Well, this is one of the things about thermos, is 9 can never go anywhere along the middle of or at the beginning of a thermo. The only place on a thermo it can go is at the tip. So it cannot go in any of the 8 cells in that box that are not tips. Those are not tips.
None of those can be 9s?
That's correct.
Wow. So we only have one spot for a 9?
So we can corner mark a 9 there, right?
Well, why don't we just go ahead and place a 9?
Yes. Yeah. When you corner mark cells in a box, you're saying these are the only places that digit can go. So we could corner mark a 9 there.
Yes.
But when you get it down to one corner mark, that means you can put a big digit in.
Yes, so big digit.
I want to ask a question that's not as good,
okay,
but might be illustrative of something.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to look at the same box because it's still chock full.
Still box 2.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm going to ask, where can 1 go in that box?
So 1 cannot go partway along a thermo because there is no Sudoku digit less than 1 that would go before it on the thermo. So none of those can be 1s. I don't know which one of those is a 1, but I know that the one in box 2 has to be in one of those 3 cells, and that's what our corner marks tell us.
Those corner marks say, these are the only places in box 2 that 1 can be placed.
Yes.
And we use the corner marks to keep track of that deduction because now we can look at what that says in other places around the grid.
Yes. And corner marks are most useful when they are all in the same row or all in the same column within a box.
Yeah. We try not to corner mark more than 2 or 3 cells.
Yes.
We could corner mark 9. We could corner mark, I don't know, 6s in box 5, and they could go anywhere.
Yeah. We could corner mark 9s in box 5, and they could go in any of those cells. Yeah. That's not going to be a useful corner mark. So, but these 1s, the fact that the 1s in box 2 have to be in row 1, so the 1 has to be in one of those 3 spots, means that we can't have 1s anywhere else in that row. I'm going to mark those red just for a moment to say those can't be 1s.
Could we maybe look at another box?
Yeah, it's my turn to ask a question. Okay. So, yeah. And my question to you is, now that we know that those can't be 1s, where can 1 go in box 1?
Well, then let's turn the cells it can't go red.
Okay.
To continue with your...
I like that idea.
So all of the ones that are partway along a thermo, remember, 1s can only go in the bulb of the thermo.
Doesn't mean that the bulb has to be 1. But it means that 1, if the 1 is on the thermo, it has to be in the bulb. So those can't be 1s.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do now?
There's only 1 spot left. That is a 1.
Are we corner marking the 1 or placing the 1?
I would say let's
place the 1.
Okay. And now we can get rid of the colors.
We'll get rid of the 1. Well, let's get rid of the red in box 1 because that's not going to help us. But now this 1 is looking over and saying, those can't be 1s.
And remember, 1 can't go along partway along a thermo, so those can't be 1s.
It's your turn to ask a question.
Where does 1 go in box 3?
Where does 1 go in box 3? I like that question. And so now we have several digits placed. We have not done any center marking. We've only used the logic of extreme values on thermometers to try to identify some things. So I have another question for you. It's my turn, right? It's my turn?
We don't have to go.
Fair enough. Okay. Where does 1 go in column 7? So here's column 7. Where can 1 go in those that... I'm going to turn them yellow for the moment. Those are the ones we're looking at.
Yeah.
And now we can turn them red when we say it can't be a 1.
It can't be in box 3 because there's a 1 in box 3 already.
There's already a 1. So this one is not a 1. Okay.
Well, neither are the other 2 yellow cells in the box.
Oh, right. Okay. Those can't be.
But also the yellow cells along the thermo now can't be 1s.
Okay. Because there's nothing lower. So the 1 in column 7 has to be in one of these 2 cells. And so we'll just go ahead and corner mark those again. So one thing to notice, we were using column logic to say 1s can only be in these 2 spots, but they are also in the same box. And that's what lets us, that's sort of our criterion for where we do center marks. Center marks need to be contained within the same box to give useful information. But even though we were using column logic, it was with respect to a particular column, but those corner marks wound up in the same box, so we placed them.
Yep.
Okay.
So we put some 1s in, but we used 9s earlier, and we didn't follow up on that.
We didn't. Let's do some more things
I have a
with
question.
9s. Okay.
Where can 9 go in box 1?
Well, let's do the same thing that we did with the reds. So we know this 9 is ruling out all of those cells.
And it can't go part way along a thermo.
Cannot be in any of those because this is already a 1. Yep. And these have thermo digits after them, as do these. Those can't be 9s. I'm thinking that the answer to your question is that the 9 goes right here.
That's why I asked it.
I bet. Okay, so let's get rid of the red again. Not helping at the moment.
And let's see if we can push that those thoughts further.
Yeah. So my question then is, where does 9 go in box 3? So here's box 3.
Well, let's redify the digits it can't go in.
Okay.
So it can't go in row 1.
Because of this 9. Looking over. Yep, those can't be 9s. Okay.
And it can't go in row 3.
Because of this 9 looking over.
And it can't go part way along a thermo.
Oh.
Or on the bulb.
Yeah, so those can't be 9s. I guess that's our 9.
Mm-hmm. I have a question.
Okay.
What?
Wait. Trying to get my colors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is 9 in box 7?
Where is 9 in box 7? So this is box 7 right down here. So let's turn that red. So there's a 9 looking down. So it can't, I'm sorry, I meant to turn these yellow because we're looking at box 7. What is going on with that marking? I have
you
no
have
idea.
pen tool on.
Do I? I didn't realize there was a pen. Oh, yes. I'm going to turn off the pen tool very quickly. There we go. All right. So box 7, yellow cells. Now we have a 9 looking down. So none of those can be 9s. 9 cannot go part way along in thermo. So none of those can be 9s. So we got 2 possible places for 9. Let's corner mark it.
Remember, corner marks say these are the only places in the box that this digit can go.
Sweet.
And they're in the same column, which is good.
Which is very helpful, yes. There we go. I'm trying to get rid of the colors. There we go. So now, where do 9s go in box 4? This is box 4 right here.
Yeah, that wasn't as helpful with box 7.
No, it wasn't. But maybe it'll give us some more information that's worth recording. Okay. So this 9 looking down says those can't be 9s.
And then the pair of corner marks in box 7 looking up means it's in one of those 2 cells, so it can't be anywhere else in the column.
Yep. Let's actually take a moment and go through that a little bit more slowly because the corner marks are such new knowledge and a way of recording important things. So we don't know which of these 2 is a 9. Well, we only get one 9 for this whole column. And it is in one of those 2 cells. We don't know which one, but it's one of those 2. So these cannot be 9s. This idea of the corner marks pointing along a row or along a column or within a box to rule out the other cells in that region from being that digit is vastly useful in Sudoku.
If we can revisit the ones in box 9.
Can we finish this first, though? Yeah. Okay. So these aren't 9s, those aren't 9s, and as we keep saying, 9 can't go partway along a thermo, so that's not a 9. So now we've restricted the possible locations of 9 in box 4 down to 2 cells that are in the same column, so we're going to corner mark them. And again, we're only going to corner mark if we can get it down to 2 or 3 cells, and preferably in the same row or same column within the same box.
Now, I want to revisit the ones in box 9 because we used column logic to place them there.
Yes.
But once we placed them there, they had to be in one of those 2 cells, and now they rule them out from the rest of the box.
Yes.
So the ones can't go, for example, in row 9, column 9, or row 9, column 7, where they might have been able to be placed before.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
Where are 9s in box 8?
In box 8, well, let's highlight box 8 just to remind everybody where it is. So that's box 8. We're looking at this. Now, this would be a good time to pause the video, take a moment, see if you can figure out whatever you can about 9s in box 8. And so we'll give it just a 3-beat pause. All right, so here's what we've got. 9s, this 9 looking down means these can't be. What was it you keep saying about 9s and thermos?
They can't go in the bulb or part way along a thermo. They can only go on a tip.
Okay, so those can't be 9s, and we can place a 9. And we hope that you were able to see that. If you weren't, then that's okay. This is all still a learning process.
Pause the video and think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is always a good idea with these videos.
Yes.
Is to, if we say something that escapes your attention, pause the video, think about it, rewind, watch it again.
Absolutely.
Oh, that has a nice implication in box 7.
Oh my goodness, look at that. This 9 is looking over and saying, you thought this could be a 9 before, but you're wrong. It can't be a 9. Or you were right at the time it had the possibility, but we've now eliminated that possibility. So we can take that corner mark out. That can't be a 9 anymore.
That, to me, is the power of corner marks.
Yes.
Is we were able to reduce the number of places down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that was powerful-ish, but then once we got the 9 in box 8, it looked across, and you've got a corner mark there that's in there by itself.
That is the only place left in box 7 for our 9 to go. We had 2 places for 9. We ruled out one of them, and now we can place the 9 using that logic. And now let's look at box 9. Where can 9s go in box 9? This 9 rules those out. This 9 rules those out.
It can't go on a bulb.
Can't go on a bulb. So this is the only place we can put a 9. And guess what?
Oh,
that's one of the 2 possible places for a 1. So as soon as we place this 9 here, we've lost one of our corner marked 1s.
And we now have only one corner mark of a 1.
And so we can place a 1. So this is why we like corner marks. And notice that so far we have not, oops, I did not mean to get rid of those. I meant to get rid of my colors. We have not used a single center mark. And so often with thermos, we really want to use center marks because, especially on long thermos. But guess what? What's the rest of row 7? I mean, column 7?
Maybe we could center mark the rest of column 7.
We could center mark
it. That has to be at least a 1.
It can't be a 1. There's a 1.
Oh, so
here.
it has to be at least a 2.
It has to be at least a 2.
So below it has to be at least a 3.
Well, and you want a center mark, but I want to do something else with this set of stuff.
Well, let's see where we get if we try center marking.
Okay, if we center mark it, that's at least the thing is I don't like moving off of this cell until I know the full range of values for it.
Okay.
So, so what I was looking at here is that the remaining digits for this column are known. We don't have a 1 available and we don't have a 9 available. They're already used up in the column. So the digits that are left for this column are 2 through 8, and they have to go in increasing order because they're all on the thermo. So we can just go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom. So that was what I wanted to sort of show. Once you've got all of the digits in a column trapped onto the single thermo, all of the remaining digits, you can just write them all in because their order is known. So now what? We got very excited about all of that. And I think that it's probably worth asking now, where can, I think we should start looking at 8s.
Yes, I would ask, where should we start? Let's start in box 1.
Okay. I think it's worth asking in box 1, where can 2 go in box 1? So here's box 1. Let's think about where 2s can go. This 2 rules 2 out of those cells. Okay. Now, 2 cannot go 3 spaces along a thermo because 2 here would need a 1 before it and then a 0 before that at least, or at most. So these cannot be 2s. What about this cell right here, row 2, column 2? Could that be a 2?
No, because it would need a 1 before it, and there's a 1 somewhere else in the box.
Yeah, so that can't be a 2. Similarly, this can't be a 2 because if this were a 2, it would need a 1 here, and the 1 is elsewhere in the box. So those
the 2 can't be in the same cell as the 1.
Yeah, that would just be silly. So we can actually place our 2 now. This is a 2. And now we can get rid of the color on box 1. We've placed the 2 there. And so now what about in box 2? Where can 2s go in box 2?
Well, we can corner mark them.
We can.
Because they can't go in row 1 or in row 3.
Because there are already 2s in those rows. I don't know which one of those it is. Every single one of these cells has the possibility of a 1 before it.
In fact, whichever one has the 2 in row 2 will have to have a 1 in row 1 above it.
Yes.
So they'll have to be paired up.
And that's a really nice thing.
Yeah,
so,
but we don't know where they are.
We don't know where they are.
So let's return to 8s in box 1.
Okay. As you can see also at this point from the way we're going through this, we've not scripted this. We are honestly solving the puzzle at the moment, and there are different paths you can take. What we're trying to showcase here is the kind of good question that might lead to productive information. And we're sort of bouncing around the grid, and some of that's coming from the experience that we have as solvers of knowing where things look like they're under pressure, where there's a lot of tension, a lot of information. And so why did you pick box 1 as a place to look?
Well, it's got 3 digits in, and everything that is not a given digit that is now placed is filled with thermo.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at where 8 can go, it has to have if it has more than 1 digit along a thermo after it, it can't go there.
Yes.
So that cannot be.
Yeah. So in fact, let's say, so at the moment, naively, these are the possible places
Yeah.
for 8 in box 1. This cannot be an 8.
Because it would need a 9 and a 10. And clearly it can't go earlier along the thermo because it would need even more digits.
And even worse, yeah. Yeah, so one of these has to be an 8.
But if it were anywhere but the tip, it would need a 9 after it, and there's a 9 in the box.
Yes, so neither of these can be 8. We can get rid of those as possibilities, and that lets us place our 8. Boom. I'd like to ask a similar question about, still on box 1, we're now down to 5 cells that we don't know what they are. I'd like to ask where 3 goes in box 1.
Okay.
There's already a 3 here, so those can't be 3s.
And if it were in row 3, column 3, it would need a 2 and a 1 above it, and that doesn't work.
So that can't be a 3. So we don't know which of these 2 it is, but we do know the 3 is in one of those 2 cells. So we're just going to corner mark that. Those are the only 2 possible places for 3 in the box.
Where are the places now for 3 in box 2?
Let's look at box 2 and where the 3 might go. So this 3 says those aren't 3s.
And now the corner marks 3s say those look into row 1 in box 2.
It's the same logic we used for 9s in column 3. This row only gets 1 3, and it has to be in one of those 2 spots. And it was box logic that let us put the 3s here, but it's row logic that lets us extend it along this way. Those can't become be 3s. Red. So now the 3 has to be in one of these 2 cells, and that does really interesting things.
Because if you remember what we were saying about the 2s and the 1s having to be paired up, we're now going to have a 1, a 2, and a 3 paired up in the same column in that box.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for column 4?
These can no longer be 1 and 2, because if this were the 1, 2, then whichever one of these is the 3, the thermo would be broken. It wouldn't have anything that could go before the 3. So we can remove these these corner marks, which is really nice. So now we know that one of these sets of digits goes 1, 2, 3 in that order. We don't know which one it is, but one of these thermos starts out 1, 2, 3. Okay, so
I have a question now.
Go for it.
Where can 4 go in box 2, roughly speaking?
Where can 4 go in box 2? Well, let's go ahead. We're back to box 2. We know this can't be a 4 because it's already at 9. These can't be 4s because of the 4 in the row. And now, let's see. If we had a 4 in one of these spots, then prior to the 4, above the 4 on the thermo would have to be a smaller digit. And the only smaller digits available are 1, 2, and 3.
But we've used those up in a triple on one of those thermos.
Yeah,
so the 5 can't be before the 4.
These can't be 4s.
Now that's sophisticated logic, and we suggest that you pause the video, think about that, go back and rewatch it, and see if you can figure out what we've done there.
Yes. So, in fact, one of the ways that we will sometimes approach something like that, if we're still trying to see it ourselves, I'm going to go back and put in the yellow, is say, okay, so what if this were a 4? And I'm going to, we're going to actually, this is a technique that we use often. We will do something we call flashing. So I'm just going to say, ooh, this is where I'm starting to explore something just to prove to myself that it doesn't work. So if that were a 4, what would we put here? It would have to be a 1, 2, or a 3, but we know that 1s are here, 2s are here, and 3s are there. So this can't be any of 1, 2, or 3. So this can't be a 4. So I'm going to unwind back to where I put in my flashing.
What if it was in column 5?
What if it were in column 5? But right now we know that's not a 4. We've ruled that out. So what if this were a 4? I'm going to flash again, and I'm going to say, what if this were a 4? Well, this would have to be a 1, 2, or a 3. Looks like it could possibly be a 1. But if this is a 4, now all of a sudden, this can't be the 3. This has to be the 3. That has to be the 2. That has to be the 1. And this has no possible value, and it breaks the thermo. So that's why this can't be a 4.
And similarly for column 6.
Exactly. So these cannot be 4s. Same thing would happen if we tried a 4 there. So no 4s there. That means that we can corner mark the 4s in row 1 along with the 1s. All right. So as you can see, some of this logic is getting more advanced as we go. Oops, trying to get rid of my colors. But each time we're focusing on a single box or a single row or a single column and asking where can such and such a digit go in this row. So let's see. We have a lot of known information in box 3, and we said we would allow ourselves to corner mark up to 2 digits.
But I have a question. I don't think we're ready for that yet. Yeah. Where can 8 go in box 3?
I was actually going to ask that a similar question. So we know that 8 is not in any of the cells that are already filled with digits. And this 8 is looking over. That's not an 8.
And 8s cannot go anywhere but the tip or the cell next to the tip on a thermo.
Because we only have 1 digit that's higher than an 8. So this cannot be an 8.
So that restricts 8s to row 1. And again, we have only 2 spots and they're in the same row. So we like corner marking that.
Now, one thing to point out, it's tempting to say, oh, an 8 can't be in the bulb of a thermo, but it can if it's a 2-cell thermo. So it would be perfectly valid for this bulb to be an 8 because there is a 9 after it. So yeah, either of those could be 8. So now I already know what question you're going to ask next. So I'm going to ask it. Where does 8 go in box 2?
Well, we've only got 3 cells left that aren't looked at by 8s in rows.
8s take these out. The 8 in row 3 takes those 2 out. The corner marked 8s in row 1 take those out. So now we've got 3 possibilities left. Could it be there?
Well, remember, 8s can only go either on the tip or 1 cell away from the tip. And that's 2 cells away from the tip.
That is 2 cells away from the tip.
And the other one is 5 cells away, 4 cells away.
So those can't be 8s. This is an 8. And we'll get rid of our color. So we're going to pause the video for a moment. We're asking you to pause the video. We're going to keep recording. But take a moment, pause the video, and think about what some other good questions might be to ask at this point in the video. All right. We hope you came up with some questions. And actually, we hope that you came up with 3 or 4 possible things to explore. Now, this is not an interactive video. We can't say, tell us your question.
We could see if we can come up with
3 or 4 good questions.
So
okay.
I'll come up with the first one.
Oh, okay. I had one in mind.
It's probably the same one.
Probably
and
so.
then we'll struggle to come up with 2 or 3 more.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask where 8 is in box 8.
Oh, where 8 is in box 8. Interesting. I was going to ask, and so your question was, where is 8 in box 8? My question was going to be, where is 8 in box 7? So why don't we explore both of those before we do something else? And let's do your question first.
Okay.
So actually, no, let's do mine first.
Oh, you know what we could do?
What's that?
We could do yours first. Then we could rewind and do mine first.
Okay.
And then we can put them both in.
Okay.
Okay.
That works. Okay. So we'll do mine first. So I was asking about box 7, which is the green cells that we've highlighted here. So this 8 takes out those possible values. This 8 takes out those possible values. Now, this, we said 8 could go to, we know this can't be an 8 because not the tip or the next to the tip on the thermo. But this could, if this were an 8, it would have to have a 9 after it. There's already a 9 in the column. There's already a 9 in the row. There's already a 9 in the box. There's 3 different reasons that this cannot be an 8. So we can place the 8 right here in row 9, column 3. So we're going to undo that, but we're going to remember that the 8 has to be in row 9, column 3.
And we'll put it back in.
We will put it back in a moment.
Other box.
But we're going to look at Missing's question next. Okay.
So let's color the cells red where they're seeing an 8.
Those see 8s either in the row or the column.
Yep. And in column 5, we're too far along the thermo.
Yep. So those can't be 8s.
And we couldn't put an 8 in row 1 because it's too far down the thermo.
Row 9.
Row 9, because it's too far down the thermo. Mm-hmm. And so that's the only place for an 8.
So both of those were good questions that let us place 8s. So I'm going to get rid of all the color. in this box, and we're going to go ahead and put what is going on with the cursor there? We're going to get rid of this color, and we're going to go ahead and put this 8 back that we had discovered a moment ago. Great questions. So now, we hope you had some other good questions as well, and let's figure out what we can do next.
Where can 4s go in box 1?
That is a great question. Approximately. So 4s have to be in one of the cells that don't already have values. This can't be a 4 because of the 4 in the row. These can't be 4s. Take a moment, pause the video, see if you can see why. Okay, so
remember, this is where having corner marks restricted to a row is so helpful. In box 2, corner marks for 4 are in row 1, and they mean that row 1 in box 1 cannot be 4.
So 4s are in one of those 2 cells.
And the 4, wherever it is going to need a smaller digit on the bulb of the thermo, and it's going to have to be the 3 because the 1 and the 2 are taken up in the box. So they're just like in box 2, we had a 1, 2, 3 on the same thermo. Here we're going to have a 3, 4 on the thermo.
Yep. So very nice. I'm going to figure out these colors someday. All right. So now I think my next question also pertains to box 1. And that question is, where is 7 in box 1? So the 7 could theoretically be on the bulb of the thermo as long as it had an 8 and a 9 to go after it and we're at most 3 cells. But this can't be a 7 because the 8 and the 9 are both taken. That's not a 7. That's definitely not a 7 because we'd have to have the 8 and the 9 that don't exist. So we'd have to go 7, 10, 11, 12, 13. That would be a problem.
Now, with row 3, column 3, it looks like there are 2 more cells on the thermo. But if we look down the column, we see we've got an 8 and a 9 in the column already.
Yeah, so if this were a 7, right, the row 3, column 3, that would have to be an 8. That would have to be a 9. We're doubly broken because of this. So that's not a 7.
And the one above it
is even worse.
it would need a 6. We'd need 8, 9, 10.
And we don't have the 8 or the 9 or the 10. So this one also can't be a 7. So this is our only place for a 7.
And that took the place of
it took the place of one of our 4s. So there's our 4.
And now what did we say about the 3?
It had to be right before the 4. So that's our 3. And so all of a sudden we get a bunch of digits by asking the right question about 7s.
Now, we've only got 2 cells left in the box.
Now we're going to allow ourselves, and we're going to take out this corner mark because we have placed the 3.
And we can say, now there are only 2 possible values. Let's center mark them.
The things that are left for the box are 5 and 6. We already have our 1, 2, 3, 4, and our 7, 8, 9. So the only values left are 5, 6. There's only 2 cells left for the 2 values. So each of those cells has to have one of the values, 5 or 6. And so reminder, the center marking is saying these are the only values we can possibly place in this cell.
Now, I want to ask 2 questions at once, and we're going to end up center marking.
We are.
And I'm going to ask, where can digits 1 and 2 go in column 3?
That's a great question. In column 3, this has to be higher than at least 5. This has to be
higher than that.
Higher than that still. So neither of these can be 1 or 2. There are only 2 cells left to take the 2 values of 1 and 2. We don't know which one goes where, but each of those cells has to be either 1 or 2. So we'll center mark them. And so now, well, the only 3 cells that are left for this column, the only 3 values that are left for the column, we've got 1 and 2. We don't know in which order. We've got 3 and 4. We've got 8 and 9. We only have 5, 6, and 7 left to place.
And they're on a thermo.
They are on a thermo.
So they have to be in increasing order.
So this cell has to be higher than 5. It also has to be less than, I'm sorry. We know the order of them. I was being foolish. I was going to center mark them. Yes, this is what we said earlier. If you know all of the 3 of the remaining values and they're all in a thermo,
they have
you
to
can
be in increasing order.
we said that earlier and then we failed to use it. All right. So where do 7s go in box 5? We haven't put anything in box 5. I think it's feeling lonely and we should put something in box 5. So
they can't go in row 5 or row 6.
Yep, because the 7's looking in from in the rows. So those are our only possible places for 7s. Could this be a 7?
Well, it would need an 8 and a 9 after it, and there are 8s and 9s in
That's
the
a
box
problem
already.
So it's not there. But I don't think we can rule out either of those yet, because it could certainly go on the tip of a thermo, or it could go off the thermo. So we'll corner mark those 7s. Those are the only 2 places in box 5 for a 7 to go. It doesn't really help a whole lot with row logic, because we already knew that the 7 in row 5 was over here and the 7 in row 6 is over there. But it's still nice to have it marked.
I want to ask a question.
Oh, please do.
Where can 7 go in column 6?
Where can 7 go in column 6? Well, we now know, let me highlight column 6 so everybody is following what we're talking about. These 2 7s are saying in box 5, the 7 is in one of those 2 spots. So these, which are also in box 5, can't be 7s.
And the cells in box 2 are far too far near the beginning of the thermo.
Even if this one even were a 7, we'd have to have, we don't have an 8 and a 9 available, so it'd have to be 10, 11, 12, not Sudoku values. So none of those can be 7s. And these already have values. They can't be 7s. We just placed a 7. That was a great question.
And now, remember what happens when we only have digits left that are all on the thermo. We've got 6 digits left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
They have to go in increasing order, starting at the bulb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Woo! And now, look at that. We got rid of our 1, 2, and 3. We can take out those corner marks for the box because we have now placed those digits. And now, row 2 is missing 2 values. Row 3 is missing 2 values. Let's go ahead and center mark those. In row 2, we already have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 9.
So we're missing 5 and 6.
5 and 6. Whoops. And in this row, in row 3, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9. So we're missing 6 and 7. All right. Now, we're looking for the next good place to ask a good question. And sometimes it takes a moment of scanning to see where that might be. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, good.
Where can 7 go in box 7?
In box 7, this is box 7. Oh. That's a good question. Let's ask that question. So this 7 takes out those. We know that's already a 9. It can't be a 7. We know that the only possible values for this cell, even if we were ignoring the 7 in the column, are 1 and 2. So that can't be a 7. This 7 takes those out.
Now, if 7 were in row 8, column 1, you would have to have something bigger on the tip. And 8 and 9 are taken up, so that can't be a 7.
Can't be a 7. That's a 7 right there. All right. I'm seeing 2 7s down in the bottom band. Seeing a 7 here and a 7 here, and that naturally makes me want to ask, where does 7 go in box 9? So this 7 is taking those out. This 7 is taking those out. This is already a 1. So one of these 2 is a 7. Could it be that one?
If it were in row 8, column 8, it would need an 8 and a 9 above it, and neither of those can be an 8 or a 9.
So that is not a 7, and this is our 7.
Oh, that's great because it looks up to box 3.
Oh, lovely. Let me get caught up with the colors. So you're saying this looks up in its column. So 7 in column 9 is looking up, right there.
And it sees that 6-7 pair. Now, because we have that center marked as 6-7, that takes the 7 out. And that means the only possible value in that cell now is a 6.
And that 6 needs something smaller than it on the thermo. Not only is 6 no longer available because we just placed it, but also there are 5 values less than 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are already used up in the box. So that has to be the 5. And now the 5 looks over to this cell. The 6 looks over to this cell. We can take the 5 out in row 2. We can take the 6 out in row 3. And we get 2 more digits, 6 and 7.
Now, where does 7 go in box 3?
I was actually going to follow this. Let's hold that question if you don't mind. This 7 now says this can't be a 7. Yep. And we can now, because of our corner marks that told us there were only 2 places for 7 in box 5, and we've eliminated one of them, we can place a 7 in box 5. Now, you wanted to know about 7s in box 3. So we know these are the only 2 cells that are left to place digits, and there's a 7 looking up. This one can't be a 7. That has to be a 7.
And that's taken the place of one of the 2 8s that were corner marked, so that must be the 8.
That's an 8.
Now, if you double click on the 7s now.
Well, well, we could do that in a moment, but can I ask another question first?
Sure.
Which is, where does 6 go in row 1?
Okay.
These aren't 6s. That's not a 6. That's not a 6 when we mark those red. And there's already a 6 in box 2. So those aren't 6s. And this is a 6. And there was also the last digit to place in box 1. But it's nice to have different ways to see things sometimes.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to point out that if you double click on all the 7s, when you double click on a digit, it will select all of the cells that have been marked as that digit goes there. And if we count them, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 7s in the
We've got all the 7s.
We've done the 7s.
Woohoo!
And that's always worth celebrating.
That is very much worth celebrating. Lovely, lovely. Okay, so now I have a question for you. And that question is, where does 6 go in box 9? There are only 5 cells that don't already have digits.
So 6 looks down in column 9.
Taking these 2 out.
And if it were anywhere but row 7, column 8,
column 8,
if it wasn't there, it would have to have a digit bigger than it on the thermo. So if it were in row 8, for example, it would need a digit bigger than 6 above it, and 7, 8, 9 are already taken up in the box.
Yep. So neither of those can be 6 because there's nothing higher available. So this is our 6.
Now, the digit above it on the tip of that thermo has to be bigger than 6. And it can't be 7 because it sees one in the box. And it can't be 9 because it sees one in the column. So it has to be 8.
There we go. Beautiful. My next question for you then is, where does 5 go in column 8?
Well, we know it's not in box 3. And we know it's not in box 6 because there's 5s in the boxes.
And in box 3, the digits were already placed. But yeah, this 5 takes those. Okay.
Now, that means it's in one of those 2 cells. But it cannot be in row 9 because we need to have something between 5 and 6. And 5.5 is not a valid Sudoku digit.
So one of the lovely things about Sudoku for those who don't like fractions is there aren't any fractions in Sudoku. So we only get the whole numbers happening here. All right. So now, let's get rid of the colors in this column. There are some variant Sudoku puzzles out there that do use fractions. We're not going to do any of them in this course. So
I'd like to ask, what can go in that cell?
Yeah, I figured that was going to be your question.
So it has to be bigger than 6. So it has to be 7, 8, or 9. But we see a 7 in the column.
And in the row. And in the box.
Yeah, and we see an 8 in the column and in the box.
Yep, in the column, in the box. So that can't be an 8. It must be a 9.
And now, remember, when you're solving Sudokus, you want to always keep scanning for where you have information that this new digit you've placed can help you out, or these new center marks or corner marks you've put down can help you out. Here, the 9 is looking left, meaning it in the same row to the left of it, there is a corner mark 9, which can no longer be there.
Yeah, so this 9 shoots a little 9 laser beam right over here and takes out that 9. I'm sorry, that was probably more violent than we needed for the imagery here. So we had 2 possible places for 9. We just eliminated one of them in box 4. That's a 9.
Let's do some corner marking because we can.
Okay.
And we should try and do a little bit of corner marking in this puzzle. And now I think
we've done a bunch of corner marking in this puzzle.
But we can say that the digits in column 2 that are left are...
Oh, you mean center marking?
Yes, sorry, center marking. the digits that are left in column 2
are 1 through 5.
And we're not going to corner mark row 4. We're just going to corner mark the thermo now.
Okay.
Because it has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
So let's put all of them in and see why that's silly.
Okay. First of all, it's silly because it's really hard with that many corner marks, that many center marks, to tell anything about what's going on.
Yeah, so let's get rid of them.
Okay.
So if the top cell there in row 6 were anything smaller than a 4, we'd need smaller than 3, smaller than 2, smaller than 1. We'd be broken.
Yeah, so 3 here, 2, 1 would be the best we could do, and we'd have nothing for here. So this has to be at least a 4. So it's either 4 or 5. Those are our only possibilities.
Which means that the one below it cannot be bigger than 4.
Right.
And it has to be at least 3.
If it were a 2, we'd be broken. So this is either 3 or 4.
2 or 3.
2 or 3, and 1 or 2.
And now here is the beauty of center marks.
Yes.
Because now we have 2 cells in that box that both are corner marked. Sorry.
Center mark.
Here is the beautiful thing about center marks.
Yes.
We have 2 cells in this box that have the same 2 center marks in, namely 1 and 2. That means that wherever 1 and 2 are, it's in one of those 2 cells. It cannot be in row 8, column 2.
That can't be a 2. Another way to see that, I think your explanation was lovely. But again, one of the things we really say is, if something's worth proving, it's worth proving more than one way. And so you had one way. Here's a different way. If this were 2, both of those would be 1s, and that would be broken. So this can't be a 2 for both reasons, and thus we'll take out the center mark. That means it must be a 3.
Oh, but that pushes up. We talk about pushing the digits up the thermo.
Or pushing them down the thermo. Once this 3 comes out, or once that 3 is placed, that means that the cell above it can't be a 3 anymore. And I'm not going to place the 4 yet because that logic continues up. This can no longer be a 3, so this can no longer be a 4. And now we'll go ahead and place those 4 and 5.
And now we only have 2 cells in the column, and the only digits left are 1 and 2, and that means that in that that cell.
Let's go ahead and place the 1, 2 here, because that has to be the other of the 2 digits.
And now look at box 4.
Oh, I was going to look at box 7. Is it okay if we look at box 7? You want to look at box 4?
We'll get there.
Which one do you want to do?
Let's look at box 4. We have a 1-2 pair in the box.
Okay.
So the remaining 3 digits cannot be 1 or 2 because they're taken up in those 2 cells. So we've got 5, 6, 7, and 9. We only have 3, 4, and 8 left.
We'll go ahead and temporarily put all 3 of them in.
Yeah.
Just because.
Now, let's not look at row logic. There's some things here we could do with the 4 looking left and
We're
the 8
just going to look
left.
at thermo logic for the moment.
Now, if that were an 8, we'd be broken because it would need something bigger. So it can't be an 8. So it could be a 4 with an 8 above it. It could be a 3 with a 4 and 8 above it. If row 5 were a 3, we'd need something smaller, and there isn't anything available.
So we can immediately, just by thermo logic and box logic, get this down to being either 3 or 4, and this being either 4 or 8. And now we can use the 4 in the row looking over to say, oh, that can't actually be a 4, so it must be a 3. And then this 3 says the cell that's in the same column.
And now we could use the 8 in row 6 looking left and say that actually can't be an 8. So that's a 4.
Now this can't be a 4, and thus must be an 8. And now, both from box logic and column logic, there are only 2 cells left, and they're both on a thermo. So let's use the box because it's harder to think about the center marks, and so we're going to do a little practice with that. 1 and 2 are both taken up in the box, as are 3 and 4, and 7, 8, and 9.
So that leaves 5 and 6.
5 and 6. And on a thermo, they have to go in increasing order. So we get our 5 and our 6. Now, I have a question about box 5. My question about box 5 is, where does 9 go in box 5? And this is where we can use the idea of 4 digits pointing in. If you have 4 of the same digit looking at the same box, looking meaning they sort of see it. This one sees it along the row, this one sees it along the row, this one sees it along the column, and this one sees it along the column. As soon as you've got 4 of those placed, I will retify all of...
I was thinking
okay.
From the 9s looking over.
Okay, I can do that.
So we're talking about the 9s looking into the box. So the 9s are seeing all of those red cells, either from the row or from the column, or in some cases both.
Yes. So that means that this is the only remaining place for a 9.
I'll ask another question. Where does 8 go in?
I thought you might ask that. We're going to use that same idea. We've got 8s looking in on that row, 8s looking in on this row, 8s looking in on this column, and 8s looking in from this column. So 4 8s looking into box 5. That means we can place an 8.
Now, we didn't need all 4 of them looking in because of digits that we placed, but it's useful.
But it's useful logic to see. Yes. So, okay. So now we're really closing in on this puzzle. I say we go ahead and center mark these. Right now we have corner marked 4s, and we could ask, where do 5s go in this box? Because they haven't been placed, they must go in there. As soon as we've got 2 corner marks that are the same 2 digits in 2 cells in the same box, that means that we can actually turn them into center marks. So 4 must be in one of these 2 cells. 5 must be in one of those 2 cells.
No room for anything else.
No room for anything else. Those have to actually be a 4-5 pair. And center marks are often sort of more powerful for seeing things in the grid. So if you can turn corner marks into center marks for a valid reason, it's usually worth doing.
I want to ask a different type of question.
Okay.
I want to look at row 4, column 8, and ask what can go there.
Yes. So from the row, we have placed 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So the only values left are 1 and 2. And that sort of goes along with this. This makes a 1-2 pair in the row for the remaining 2 cells. But we have more than that. So we have a 1 right there. So this can't be a 1. This has to be the 2. And the 2 looks right back over and makes that a 1. And
now where can 2 go in box 4? Or what happens because of the 1?
Yes. Either way. So this is now the only space left for a 2. And that looks down and makes this a 1. And both the 1 in the column and the 1 in the box, either one of those would tell us that that's a 2. We don't need both of those pieces of information, but we could use either piece of information to get that. All right. So I think this is another good time. The puzzle is now getting close to finished. So take a moment, pause the video, see if you can finish out the puzzle yourself. We will certainly finish it ourselves also, and we'll continue explaining the logic as we go, but it's a useful thing to pause and sort of think it through yourself. So take a moment. All right, so.
What does 6 do? Where does 6 go in box 8?
Okay, I had a different question. I get to ask mine next, but I like your question. 6, we've got a 6 looking in from here. I'm going to do my same red coloring. We've got a 6 looking in from there, and we've got a 6 looking down. And that's all we need. And because this already wasn't a 6, there's also a 6 looking down. So this is a 6. So now my question is, where does 2 go in box 9? There's only 3 possible spots left for a 2.
And there's a 2 looking right. And there's a
2 looking there, taking those out. So here's our 2.
So the reason I asked the question about 6s is I now want to ask the question, where does 1 go in box 8?
Where does 1 go in box 8? Very nice.
Now, we only have 2 1s looking into the box in useful places.
Right, this one and this one.
We also have the one in column 6, I guess, but it's not useful.
Yeah.
But there's only 1 spot in the box now where it can go, and that's on the thermo. And before we got the 6th place there, it could have gone in 2 spots. Could have gone
in either spot, yes. And so now we only have 2 values left. Oh, let me get rid of my red because I don't want to confuse things. We only have 2 values left in row 9. We've placed 1, 2. We haven't placed 3. We haven't placed 4, but we've placed 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is a 3-4 pair. And we'll use center marks for that because those are the only 2 possible values for each of those cells. And we can go ahead and do the same for row 8. We have 1, we're missing 2, we have 3, we're missing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these 2 and 4 have to go in those cells. We don't know which order, but those are the only possible 2 values for each of those cells. And these, similarly, we can center mark as 3 and 5. Those are the only possible places we can put 3, the only possible places for 5, which means that those are the only possible values for each of those 2 cells.
I'd like to ask a sophisticated question.
Oh, please do.
What would happen if row 8, column 5 were a 4?
If row 8, column 5 were a 4, well, a 4 here, we wouldn't be able to have a 3 after it because that would be smaller. So that would be a 5 right here. So we'd have to have 4 and then 5.
And what would happen in row 1?
Oh my goodness, that looks up there and it would just destroy that cell. These are the only possible values that can go there. So we cannot have a 4 here, because if we had a 4 here, we'd have a 5 there. And this poor little bereft cell would have no value. So this cannot be a 4. So
we only had 2 values. It's got to be a 2.
So does that mean that this has to be a 3?
I don't know. Let's see. I don't think it does yet.
Right, because they don't have to be consecutive. And both of these are higher than 3. Up here, we had logic forcing them to be consecutive because of other things going on. We don't have that logic here. It might turn out to be a 3, but we can't say now.
It might turn out to be a 5.
But it might turn out to be a 5, yeah.
But
so,
I do have a question, though.
Yes.
What happens with the 4 in column 4 looking up?
Oh, this 4, bloop, 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 takes out this 4 and makes that one a 5. This 5 means that it looks right there, and that can't be a 5. So now we get a 4 at row 1, column 5.
And with the 5 in column 4 looks down.
Oh, it looks right back down. There's a little bouncing back and forth. That 5 looks down and says, this can't be a 5. That must be a 3. And sure enough, this turned out not to be a 3. It turned out to be a 5. But there was no logical reason to place either of those values at the time for the information we had at that point. Ooh, I love it when we get down to a single value in a column. We've got 1, 2.
We don't have 3.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we are missing 3. And so then what's left for the box? We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We're missing 1 and 2. 2 values, 2 cells. We can write them in as a pair.
And the 2 looks right in row 6.
That one was not the 2. So that's the 1 and that's the 2.
Now row 6 only has 1.
1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're missing a 3.
Now we could say row 5 is only missing 2 values.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we were sneakier and noticed it, we could notice that column 8. Oh no, there's missing 2 values too. Okay.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say this 3
looks
looks down and takes out the 3, makes this a 4. That 4 takes the 4 out of row 9, column 8, and makes it a 3.
And now I will say what I was about to say.
Yes, go for it.
We could say that row 5 is only missing 2 values and put them in as a pair, or we could be sneaky and say column 8 is only missing 1 value, and we could write that in, and then column 9 is also missing 1 value and write that in. And they happen to be a 4 and a 1.
Yes, 4 here and a 1 there. And we're done with the puzzle. Now, it took us an hour because we were going very slowly and explaining a lot of things as we went, but we hope that it was helpful in seeing how we can use corner marks and center marks.
Especially restricted center marks.
Yes, and to use them very judiciously to help drive the solve forward rather than corner marking and center marking everything in sight. Because the more marks you get in the puzzle that aren't big digits, the harder it is to spot the interactions between the information.
Remember that corner marks and center marks are notation to help you keep track of deductions.
Yes.
They're not there to just put in every single possibility. And it's much easier to see the implications of deductions if you only put in a little bit of information.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
All right. We hope that you found this video helpful and that you were able to get through a lot of the logic yourself and could actually skip forward past parts of it. But if you needed to watch it all the way through, that's also a really useful tool. And feel free to watch it as many times as you need to understand these. And hope you are enjoying your solving.